Hello, I am Loic, and in this episode of FoME Friend, Marlon and I talk to Emeritus Professor Mark Pearcy.
Mark has had a long and illustrious career in medical engineering. His career spans from research in the UK through to leading the development of the medical engineering course as we know it today at QUT.
He also covers the changes in the field, reflects on his experiences, and gives some inspiring advice for medical engineers. Enjoy this special podcast.
Hey Mark, how's it going today?
Good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so thanks for coming on to the podcast. So we usually have a tradition of starting off with a bit of a fun question. And I remember chatting to you last year a bit about the AFL, and I've heard that you're a bit of a Lions fan. So
Yes.
what are your thoughts of the Lions' chances this year and the potential of having the grand finals in Brisbane with COVID going on?
Yeah. Look, they're doing very well at the moment. It was a bit of a nail biter, the last match. Not sure it's good for my health, actually, when it's a close match. But they're doing very well. It's going to be, I really don't know what's going to happen this year because there's so many different factors going on, and they're having matches so close together that I think there are going to be some injuries. So it'll be very interesting to see how they go. Grand final in Queensland will be good.
Yeah,
I'm not sure we've got a stadium with enough seats, though. Mind you, if the COVID-19 carries on, they only have a half full.
Yeah, well, it'll be good. The Lions are good for once, so might be a home grand final.
It would be good. We actually joined. We became members the year after they got their three trophies. So it's been all downhill since then, except for the last couple of years when it's beginning to come up again. So it's really quite exciting at the moment.
Yep, fun times ahead. So just to start off with, you've been in the field of medical engineering for a while now. When you were starting out, what piqued your interest, and what was the state of medical engineering at that time?
Yeah. When I left school, there wasn't really anything about biomedical engineering around. And I was torn between mechanical engineering and medicine. And I've always liked tinkering with bits of equipment. So I went for mechanical engineering, so I did a 3 years honours degree at Bristol. And then after that, I went as a volunteer overseas for a couple of years. And people had suggested it was a good idea to do a postgraduate course when you came back, just to get back into your own culture. So I had a look around. I saw the Masters of Biomedical Engineering, or Bioengineering as it was called then, at the University of Strathclyde in Scotland, in Glasgow. So I enrolled myself in that for 2 years later on, because I thought it would be really nice to combine the engineering with an application to medicine. And then a couple of months before I was due to come home, I got a letter from Strathclyde saying they got a spare PhD scholarship. Would I like it? And of course, you never turn things like that down. So it all went from there.
Cool. So you've also worked as a research fellow both in the UK and in Australia. How did the experience differ between the different countries?
It's an interesting question, that. I'm not sure the experience of doing research differs much between the UK and Australia. Scientific method works in both places, and the atmosphere in research tends to be fairly similar around the world, I think. People are eager, motivated, keen to look into new things. And if you've got that enthusiasm, I think you tend to find that wherever you're doing research. So I don't think the research atmosphere was very different between the two. Might come back to that later on, because when you get into careers, there is a little bit of a difference there.
It's like more about like the culture change, or stuff like that.
Yes, that was interesting, because we moved. Well, I was a lecturer in Durham at the time we moved to Australia, and we moved to Adelaide. And Adelaide's a lovely place. Really enjoyed living there, and it's very English in some ways, but every now and then something would happen and I'd think, oh my goodness, I'm in a foreign country. So the culture was similar, but had some differences.
It's when someone pulls out a Vegemite, although you've got Marmite, so that's pretty close, right?
Yeah, see, my wife's Australian, so I've known about all that stuff for a while.
Yeah. So this kind of takes us to your role in Adelaide, where you worked as the chief hospital scientist. So what did this role kind of consist of, and how is that similar to what we would see as a clinical engineer today?
Yeah, it actually had nothing to do with clinical engineering at all.
Oh, okay.
So whilst I was working in the Royal Adelaide Hospital, I was actually asked by the Professor of Orthopedics there to go and run his research program. So I was continuing as a researcher, developing a research program in orthopedics. Interestingly, when I arrived there, the head of the medical physics and biomedical engineering department tried to poach me. But I wanted to stay with the research, and I thought it would be a bit off for me to leave the guy who'd actually brought me out to Australia as soon as I got there. So I stayed in a research role and developed up basically a little materials testing laboratory, and we did a lot of work on clinical data for people having hips and knees replaced. But my PhD was on spinal mechanics, so I carried on doing research with the spinal surgeons as well. So we did a lot of work with mechanics of joints. We did testing on knee joints and spines, and we also looked at retrieved implants, looking at the ones that had failed because they'd worn, and the difference between those and the ones that had been removed for other reasons, that the joint hadn't actually failed. Yeah, so nothing to do with clinical engineering, all about research.
So it's more about implementing those research facilities in that hospital.
Yeah. So I got some grants and actually developed a little testing lab, and actually employed some engineers from University of Adelaide to come and work in that lab with me.
Oh, wow. Mm. And then after this, you leave Adelaide and move to Brisbane, to our beloved QT. So what brought you to Brisbane away from Adelaide, which was so much a little bit like home?
Yeah, I actually moved from the Royal Adelaide Hospital to Flinders University after about 4.5 years. So I was at Flinders for 18 months, and in the early 90s, I think the philosophy had changed about biomedical engineering or medical engineering. Traditionally, it had always been that people did a mechanical engineering degree or an electrical engineering degree, and then did a postgraduate degree in biomedical engineering or bioengineering. There'd been a bit of a change of philosophy. People were saying, well, why don't we actually have an undergraduate degree in medical engineering? So Flinders had started one, and I went to join that group for 18 months. And then I'd only been there for about a year, actually, when the professor I was working with there, he came in to see me. I think it was a Monday morning. He'd been to a conference in Perth, and he said to me, I don't want to tell you this, but I suppose I should. But there's a chair being advertised in Brisbane at QUT. They're setting up a medical engineering degree as well. They're looking for someone to go and establish that. So I was following my career, basically, and the job came up at QUT, and I came up for interview and got the job, and I've been here ever since.
So what was the process like coming into a university and kind of shaping the medical engineering discipline?
Yeah. To me, it was a dream job, really, because as my career went, I got into the academic world lecturing, and then I did more research, and then got into an academic post again. And to me, the pinnacle, to be a professor in biomedical engineering, to be responsible for developing a degree course, was what I really wanted to do. So came up with lots of enthusiasm, and the degree here had actually started in 1994. Professor Will Scott, Dr. Tim Barker, and I think Professor Doug Hargraves were involved originally. So they'd got the degree going in 94, and then they'd seen that they needed a senior person to come and develop it and get it accredited by the Institution of Engineers, what's now Engineers Australia. So my role was to come up here and to basically organise the degree in a way that was acceptable to Engineers Australia, so it's an accredited engineering degree, and develop the course structure, the subjects that were in it. We went through several iterations of that because, as universities do, they like to change things around. So I think when we first came, I think we had, something like 6 4-unit credits each semester, and then it changed to the 6 credit units and then 12 credit units. So we were always changing the degree, but trying to meld the subject matter together into new units. So that was a major part of what I did, was to organise the course structure and get the subjects up and running. And a lot of what I did when I first came here was to go around Brisbane and surrounding areas and find the biomedical engineers who were working in the field, find out what they were doing, find out how they could help us with the course. I managed to get quite a few of them interested in coming and doing some lecturing as well. So my role was to build it up into a degree course that was based in reality around what people were doing, and then make sure it was accredited by the institution. So that was the teaching side of things, but my other role was then to develop the research side of medical engineering at QUT. And so we developed the labs on level 2 in O Block. That was the first thing we managed to do. And then serendipitously, I think that's the right word, I was contacted by people that I'd made contact with in the orthopaedic community in Brisbane. And they'd got some money and they wanted to establish a chair in orthopaedic research. And I remember I was at my desk in my office in O Block, and I got this phone call from a guy called Ian Dickinson, who's an orthopaedic surgeon in Brisbane. And he said to me, would you be interested in having a professor of orthopaedic research come and join you at QUT? So I said yes, and immediately we'd finished the discussion, I contacted the Vice-Chancellor, who just happened to answer his phone, which doesn't usually happen, but he did. And I said, we need to follow this up. And so we had a meeting with the group, and Ross Crawford was the guy who was then employed as the Professor of Orthopaedic Research. And because of those links we developed, both with biomedical engineers and with the orthopaedic community, we then had other groups come to us to say, we've seen what you're doing with the orthopaedic chair, we want to do similar things, we've got some money, let's set up some other research groups. So fairly quickly, over a few years, we established several different research groups with external funding, working mainly in orthopaedics, hips and knees and spines. And we developed some relationships with the spinal surgeons at what is now the Children's Hospital, and that's Jeff Askin and Rob LeBron, and we have the biomechanics and spine research group still going with them now. So that was the second part of my role, to build up the research side of things.
Wow, so that's all the beginning of those amazing organizations like IBI and MRF that we have now.
That's right, yeah. So IBI came shortly after that. At that time, QUT decided to draw all its health-related research into one institution. Most of it was biological and from the health faculty, so nursing, and then all the biological tissue engineering and cell biology type things. And as the engineering side, we were quite a small group, but we had quite a good presence by then, quite a reasonable sized research group. And so we were asked to take our research to IBI as well. So we developed, again, testing labs over there, and we moved there in 2006 to be the medical device domain within IBI, as it was called then. MRF came a little bit later, and it was very interesting at that time in Queensland and in Brisbane. Peter Beattie was running the state government at that time, and he had some great foresight for a politician, because he was putting money into research infrastructure in Brisbane, both into IBI and into MRF. We got a grant from the Smart State Research Facilities Fund that part funded the building of MRF up at the Prince Charles Hospital. I actually said to Peter Beattie when I went to the announcement that they were giving the funding, I said to him, I found it quite strange that he as a politician was doing this, because he wasn't going to see the benefit of these things in his political life. And I think he was quite a remarkable politician in that sense, that he had that foresight to say, we can build Brisbane into a research centre here, which we've done with IBI, with the TRI, with MRF and the CCHR. There's a lot of research going on here that wouldn't have happened in the same way if Peter Beattie hadn't put the money in.
Yeah, exactly. That all those things have kind of blossomed to allow Brisbane to be much more of especially in the medical engineering field, than it probably would have been without that kind of investment.
Yeah, that's right.
So you talked about how a really key part of medical engineering was bringing guest lecturers in.
Yeah.
But I just want to talk, what was your favorite subject to teach, and what did you enjoy most about your teaching experience for medical engineering?
It's a good question, that one. Look, I actually enjoyed teaching a lot of the units. So there was a time, I think after Tim Barker left, when I was the only lecturer in biomedical engineering, so I actually ran the whole course myself for a couple of years. So I got to know all of these. I think the things I really liked were where you could teach a bit of theory and then go into the laboratories and show how that theory all worked. Because of my background in lecturing at University of Durham, where I was put into the thermofluids group, I've always taught biofluids. I haven't actually done much research in that area, just a little bit. But I actually enjoyed teaching the biofluids because there was some quite detailed mathematical analysis in it, which you could then take that into the laboratory and show how some of that worked in reality. Teaching is an interesting thing. I really enjoy teaching. I find that it's really enjoyable when you can help someone to reach their own potential and see their own potential. I've got a couple of instances where you could see the light turning on in someone's eyes when they realised they could actually understand what they were doing, they could solve problems with it. I used to find that the really good students, they're really fun and they're easy because you point them in a direction and off they go and you don't have to do much. The students who haven't got quite so much ability, I can find them really, really fascinating to teach, because if you can lead people through, give them a bit of a nudge and lead them along, and explain things to them, you can see the understanding coming, and then the joy they get from that and being able to solve problems with the knowledge that they've gained, and the way how to solve problems. I think it's really exciting for me to do that. So which unit did I really enjoy the most? I was thinking about this before, and I actually quite enjoyed teaching health legislation and the medical environment. It gave me a chance to discuss the ethical aspects of medical engineering a lot with students. Because in engineering, we don't often do much of that, but that was a unit where we could really get into that. So I quite enjoyed that. But the practical subjects where we go into the lab and do messy things, I really enjoy that as well.
So we don't actually have the health legislation subject anymore. Does that cover more along the lines of regulatory and international standards?
That's right. So it's incorporated within the design, I think, now, isn't it? So
so it's probably more like our modern biodesign today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the course has changed a lot over the years, and with changes, because originally it was a standalone degree course. So we had full control over what we put into it. Now it's become majors and minors within mechanical engineering. It's constrained a little bit, and so they had to condense some of the content down into units. But yeah, so it's regulatory issues now. But I think they still do a bit of the ethics and the morals behind the regulations.
Yeah, I think there's still a bit covered there, which is good. I think it's pretty important when you're dealing with medical devices that affect humans.
That's right. Yeah.
So tagging along with your development of the organizations, CCHR, the Spinal Group, IBI Mirth, you would have had some kind of form of industry collaboration there. How did you develop the relationships there, and how did that go?
Yeah, look, that's always been a very important part of my career, really, because medical engineering is the interface between medicine and engineering. You have to work with the clinicians. So wherever I've been, one of the major parts of my work has been finding out who's interested in working with us, and then developing relationships with them. And the important thing when you're trying to work with industry and with clinicians is you have to show them that you have something of value to them. And that takes a long time to develop those relationships. So I started in Australia, in Adelaide, working with orthopaedic surgeons there, and then the companies that were working with them and sponsoring the research. So I spent a lot of time working with the reps from the companies and the managerial side, the research side of the companies, just to build up that relationship. So coming then to Brisbane, I had some of those relationships, but I went out here and met other people. And it takes time. You have to find people who, especially in the research side of things, who are actually interested in doing research and then are interested in working with you, which means you have to show them that you have something of value that will assist them in developing their clinical practice. So it's very important. It takes a lot of time, but that's one of the major roles that I saw as a professor leading a discipline in medical engineering. You have to build up those relationships.
So did you find that you had to start seeking them out during the beginning, and then later on they started approaching you, or was it a bit of a mix of the both?
Yeah, first of all, I had to go and introduce myself. So I spent a lot of the first couple of years going around, meeting people, talking to them. And through that, that we got known at QUT, and we built up quite a good research group. So then people started coming to us. And as I was saying, with the chair of orthopaedic research, with Michael Schutz originally with the chair of trauma, and he's now back in Brisbane, fascinatingly enough, to lead another trauma group. That was all because we built up a reputation working with people, and they then came to us to for us to assist them. Yeah, big part of the job. It takes a lot of time, but you have to put the effort into making those relationships.
Yeah, lots of meetings there.
Yes.
So, you've had a pretty long career, and you would have seen the development of computational methods to assist you in research. So, how has this changed the field, in your opinion?
Enormously. I was reflecting on this earlier on today. I first got connected to the internet at Flinders University in 1995. So I got my first use of email was in 1995. And I can remember the awe and the wonder of being able to send a message to a colleague who I'd worked with in Oxford, who was then in the States. And in the morning, there'd be a reply from him. It was amazing. Because before that, it was all done with mail. You'd write a letter and a couple of weeks later you'd get a reply back if you were lucky. So communication has been a major part of what computing has done for us now. So that's one side of things. Then the other side is the ability to analyze huge amounts of data now. One example I've got of this is when we were doing human movement studies in the past, you'd have film and you'd project the film onto a wall and you'd mark points on the wall and you'd make measurements on the wall, and then you'd go on to the next frame and you'd make more measurements, and you'd put all that data together by hand. It used to take hours. And now we've got 3D motion analysis systems which can do it in seconds. So it's enabled the analysis of data to be done very quickly, so we can get results very quickly, which is, it's great. And with clinical data as well, you can, with a lot of, they talk about big data now, all the analysis of patient data, that can be all be done very quickly now, which, it's changed how we do things, but it's a good thing. It enables us to do a lot more. And then in terms of the engineering, you've got all the finite element analysis, all the 3D modeling that can be done now. With the Biomechanical Spine Research Group, we've got an amazing three-dimensional model of the human spine, and muscles are being put on that at the moment so that we can then simulate how people will move and behave, and particularly if people have deformities, what you can then do to modify their deformity, so that assists the surgeons in looking at how flexible someone is and then what sort of surgery they can do to assist them if they have major deformities.
Yeah, it's useful. They're doing some really great work over there at the CCHR with that model.
Yeah.
So where do you see the field going in the future? And, how do you think medical engineering education needs to adapt to these changes? In particular, I remember going down to the Australian Biomedical Engineering Conference last year, and I was kind of astounded to see that, a lot of the stuff that the vendors were offering was, software, like electrical, had to do with the networking of, different medical devices. How do you think that needs to progress into the education side of things?
Yeah, I think the linking of the electrical and mechanical is very important, and that's developed a lot. Interestingly, I don't know if you're aware of the history of the title medical engineering, because the words have changed a lot over the years. So when I first did my PhD, it was in bioengineering. That term has sort of been usurped by the genetic engineers or biologists. So biomedical engineering became the term, but originally biomedical engineers were those that made electronic devices. And because QUT was based in mechanical engineering, we thought, well, we'd like not to call it biomedical engineering, so we called it medical engineering. And that makes it specific to working with human health as well. So what's the future going to be? I think electronics and mechanics together, robotics is going to be a major part of it. I know QUT is doing a lot on robotics in surgery now as well. Software is an interesting one. I always feel that if you're using software, you really need to know a little bit about what it's actually doing, because it's very easy to get into the trap of using a bit of software and thinking that what you get out is actually linked to what you put in. And so you have to be careful that you know what it's doing. And in terms of modeling, computational modeling is going to be a major part of the future as well.
So we also took the chance to talk some of your previous students, and
Right.
they've all dubbed you the Gandalf of medical engineering.
That came from working with people at Prince Charles Hospital with John Fraser and Daniel Timms and Sean Gregory. I'm not quite sure who of them came up with that name, but yeah.
Well, it's perpetuated now, and
Oh, good. I like it.
and they had a few questions for us to add on.
Right.
So, first question was, said that Mark, you taught them so much about the balance of regulations and the importance of getting that balance right between innovation and safety. So with the new changes that come with the MDR, what do you think of devices such as cosmetic eye contacts being regulated as a medical device?
Yeah, interesting that. I actually looked that up earlier on this afternoon because I wasn't aware of, I haven't looked at that recently. Contact lenses, even for just color changes, were under the registry even in 1998. So it's that's not new. But what is new is that I think it's interesting that looking at this, I think you have to ask the question, what was the question that was being asked that caused that to be nominated as something of interest? So there must have been some adverse events that went on with people making just aesthetic contact lenses. So the whole point of having the regulatory system is the quality assurance, so that when you put a device in the eye or anywhere else in the body, it's not going to do any harm. So I think the whole idea of having a quality framework is really what the regulatory body is about, and monitoring that to make sure that whatever someone does somewhere in a manufacturing concern that makes something that's going to be affecting the body, then I think it's an important thing. TGA and the FDA have very difficult jobs because they're always walking the line between restricting manufacturers or not restricting them, but also making sure that people aren't injured by devices that are put into the body or onto the body. So I think anything that helps the regulatory system do its job well has got to be a good thing.
Yeah, because more and more things are walking this line, becoming more wearable, more incorporated within us. So it's tough as you could even have industries starting to cross over. So something that might not just...
That's right, yeah. Yeah, the wearable devices is interesting because one of the things we always struggled with in medical engineering is that the sensors you need to be able to measure the things that you'd like to be able to measure are often not there. So I think the wearable devices and other small sensors, the development of those in the future is going to open up doors that weren't there previously.
And the next question we had from one of your students was they were reminiscing about doing 3D printing as a form of like rapid prototyping when they were using it to make bone scaffold years ago, and how advancements now mean that they can print so much quicker and so many different more materials. And just want to know, did you see this kind of 3D printing taking off like it has in the field?
Yes and no, I think. For a long time, surgeons have been making anatomical models of difficult deformities so they can plan their surgery. But in terms of really useful implantable devices, it's taking a while to get there. So I didn't really see it happening, but I think with the advancements in the technology of printing and the different materials that can be used, I think it's a really exciting thing for the future. And really, it's only just beginning now with the good application into medicine of these things. So yeah, it's really exciting. And no, I didn't really see it. I think the materials is the difficult thing to deal with. What are you putting in the body? What's it supposed to do? If you're replacing big bits of the body, how do you get a blood supply to get into the material in order to replace the material, or at least make it integral with the body? So those are the issues that I think will be dealt with. But yeah, it's a good thing for the future.
And we always like to have as our last question, if you could have any final words of advice that you would give to the next generation of medical engineers, students who are coming through now.
Yeah, okay. It's always a difficult one, that, because it's what's the future, and how do you advise people about the future? When you're talking about biomedical engineering, medical engineering, I think the whole point of biomedical engineering is that the bio is actually quite important, because the engineers who are working in that area are trained across the disciplines. And what you have to be really aware of is that the biomedical engineer or the medical engineer is interfacing the biology with the engineering. So when you're talking to clinicians or biologists, you have to be able to understand their issues and explain how the engineering will assist what they're doing. And for other engineers, you have to be able to do the other side of it. You have to explain to them how devices will interact with the body and what the issues are there that they have to deal with. So that's my summary of what biomedical engineering is all about. What advice do I give for people getting into the field? It's general life advice, really. Look for something that you really enjoy doing, and then work hard at it. Don't let people tell you can't do anything. Have a go at it. But having said that, you know, people always say, "Oh, no, don't let anyone tell you you can't do anything. Just go ahead, follow your dream." You have to have some realism in that as well, and that's part of your networking. I know some of the other people you've had on these interviews have talked a lot about networking. That's all about finding people who you trust, who help you with your ideas, can mentor you, advise you. Always have more than one, because no one knows everything. So find people that you trust, you can talk to about what you're doing, where you're going, and follow your dreams that way. When I was retiring, I thought about this as well, and I think three things came to mind. One was work hard. Follow your dream, but work hard. If you don't work hard, things don't work. And then when opportunities come along, take them. So don't say, "Oh, I'll follow it up tomorrow." Follow it up immediately if an opportunity arises. See where it would lead you. And then on your journey through life, just be kind to people that you encounter and work with. So I came up with this acronym, which is work hard, opportunities, and always be kind, which reads WHOPAK. WHOPAK. That's what I'd leave you with, I think, probably.
Well, that's definitely some great advice. I'm sure to keep that in mind.
Yeah. Actually, I've got a little thing I wrote down here about the interface between engineers and biologists. I don't know whether you're familiar with Wallace and Gromit and the wrong trousers.
Yeah, yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah, there's when I was at Strathclyde University, the rehabilitation engineers developed an exoskeleton walking frame, like a robotic legs. They were helping to assist people who were paralysed to walk. And I remember the report of one guy who was strapped into these legs and then walked around the room. And he said it was the most terrifying experience of his life, because he had no control over this thing and it was walking him around the room. So that sort of reinforces the idea of biomedical engineers be aware of the interface between engineering and the human body.
Yeah, that's a funny one. We'd just like to thank you so much for coming on and having a chat to us. It's been really great to learn the history of medical engineering and how you developed the course at QUT. So yeah, thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Yeah,
Such an honor.
I'm still attached to QUT, so if anybody wants to talk to me, you can email me, and I'm happy to respond to questions.
It's just such an honor to talk to the Gandalf of medical engineering.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for listening, and a massive thank you again to Mark Pearcy for coming on and talking to us today. He truly is the Gandalf of medical engineering.
Make sure to like and subscribe to FoME Friend on the YouTube channel, and we will see you next time. Bye.